Ethan never believed in curses, but the place they called the discard pit made his skin crawl the moment he stepped onto its black stone ground. The sky above the alien world was always dark, filled with slow-moving red clouds that looked like old wounds across the heavens. The air smelled of burning metal and something bitter that caught at the back of the throat. Even the machines seemed quiet here, as if they too feared making noise. This world was not on any tourist map or trade route. It existed for one reason only: to receive what the Empire no longer wanted. Broken machines, failed experiments, unwanted creatures. Everything that did not fit was sent here to disappear. Ethan was just a technician for the Interstellar Rescue Guild. A small title for a small man who spent most of his days fixing sensor arrays and cleaning cargo rooms. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He had never fired a weapon in anger. He had joined the guild because he wanted to help, not fight. Most days, that meant fixing broken life pods and guiding lost ships back to safety. Today, it meant standing on the edge of a pit that smelled like death. The pit was wider than a stadium and so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Faint lights glowed far below, like dying stars trapped underground. Huge mechanical arms moved slowly around the circular edge, dropping metal containers, stone crates, and sealed pods into the darkness below. Each time something fell, there was a soft echoing crash that never fully reached the surface. The sounds did not belong to one world. They belonged to many. 1,000 endings trapped in one place. Ethan held his data tablet close to his chest. His task was simple. He had to test the air filters of a nearby waste station and send a report to headquarters. It was supposed to be routine work. But something about today felt wrong. The pit seemed louder than usual, even though the machines barely made a sound. It was as if the world itself were breathing slowly and painfully. He tried to focus on his work. He knelt beside a vent and ran a scan. Poison levels were high, just as expected. Radiation levels were stable. Everything matched the usual reports. He should have packed up and left. That was the plan. Then he heard it. It was not loud. It was not clear. At first, he thought it was the wind crawling through broken pipes. But the sound came again, soft and thin, like the cry of something too tired to scream. He froze. Ethan lifted his head and listened. The pit had never made sounds like that before. It had always been full of echoes and metal screams and dull crashes. But this was different. This sounded alive. Another faint sound drifted upward, weak and shaking. It was a cry. Ethan swallowed hard. His heart began to beat faster. Every rule he had ever learned told him to ignore it. This world was not a rescue site. This world was a grave. Only Empire-approved crews were allowed to touch anything thrown into the pit. Getting involved meant prison or worse. He took a step toward the pit without realizing it. The sound came again. This time, he was sure. Something was alive down there. Ethan told himself he would just take a look. Just a scan. Just enough to confirm what he already knew. He moved closer to the edge and aimed his tablet downward. The light from the screen barely reached past the first few layers of falling debris. Nothing. Then another sound. Closer. He leaned forward. The world tilted. Loose gravel shifted under his boot and slid into the pit with a soft rattle. Ethan stumbled, windmilling his arms, barely catching himself before falling in. His heart slammed against his ribs as he dropped to his knees, gasping. For a long moment, he stayed there, breathing hard. Then, from deep below, came the sound again. Not one voice. Many. Ethan's stomach turned cold. He activated his scanning tool and adjusted the frequency, searching for life signs. At first, the screen showed nothing but flickering static. Then tiny dots appeared. 1, 2, 3. More. His breath caught. They were weak. So weak that the scanner barely picked them up. But they were there. Alive. Ethan's hands trembled. He stared at the screen, then at the dark mouth of the pit. His mind filled with questions he did not want to answer. Who would throw living creatures into a pit like this? What kind of species did that to their own? The answer came quickly, and it made his chest ache. The Empire. Everyone knew about dragons. They were not legends. They were not stories. They were real, powerful beings that once ruled parts of the galaxy long before humans ever left Earth. But the Empire feared them. Dragons lived too long. They grew too powerful. They bonded too deeply with certain species, and the Empire could not control that. So they were labeled dangerous, unstable, unnecessary. And their young were called something worse. Flawed. Ethan had seen reports in the data streams. Dragon hatchlings born with twisted wings, dull scales, or strange glowing eyes were quietly removed from breeding sites. The Empire said they were unstable and would grow into monsters. Most people accepted that. Ethan had never thought much about it. Until now. He stood slowly, his legs shaking. He stared into the darkness. And then, against all reason, he did something no one else would have done. He climbed down. There was an old maintenance ladder bolted into the side of the pit, rusted and half buried under ash. It had not been used in years. Everyone assumed nothing alive lasted long enough to need it. Ethan grabbed the cold metal and began to descend. Each step took him deeper into the smell of rot and burned metal. The air grew thick, heavy with poison and decay. His breathing mask filtered most of it, but the stench still leaked through. Below him, the pit glowed faintly with green and orange reflections from broken tech and cracked power cells. He kept moving. Down. Further. The sounds grew clearer. Small. Weak. Crying. When his boots finally touched ground, his legs nearly gave out. The bottom of the pit was a nightmare landscape of smashed machines, broken containers, and burned bones from creatures he could not name. Then he saw them. They were huddled together between a cracked fuel pod and a mound of scrap metal. The dragon hatchlings. They were smaller than he expected. Some were no bigger than house cats. Their scales were dull instead of bright. Their wings were thin and torn. One had a twisted leg. Another had eyes that glowed too brightly in the dark. They should not have been alive. But they were. And they were terrified. The smallest one backed away, dragging one broken wing across the ground. Another tried to lift its head but collapsed with a weak cry. Their little chests moved too fast, breathing short and shallow. They had not eaten in days. Maybe longer. Ethan felt something in his chest break open. He knelt slowly, careful not to scare them. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I'm not going to hurt you." The words felt foolish. As if language meant anything in a place like this. One tiny dragon crawled forward. It was the smallest of them all. Its scales looked like burned coal, cracked and dull. One wing was shorter than the other. A thin line of light pulsed weakly beneath its skin, like a heartbeat made of fire. It lifted its head. And looked at him. Its eyes were not wild. They were tired. And somehow, aware. The tiny dragon took one more step and collapsed. Without thinking, Ethan reached out. The dragon's small body was warm despite the cold ground. When his fingers touched its scales, the hatchling did not recoil. Instead, it wrapped its tiny claw around his finger. Ethan froze. The rest of the world disappeared. The pit. The Empire. The fear. Everything faded. There was only that small, warm grip. A grip that said everything without words. "Help me." Ethan swallowed hard. Tears burned at the edges of his eyes, though he did not let them fall. He looked at the others. At their broken wings. At their dull scales. At their hunger. And in that moment, standing at the bottom of the Empire's trash pit, Ethan made a choice that would change the galaxy. He would not leave them. He did not know how. He did not know when. He did not know if he would survive. But he knew one thing. He would not let them die here. Above him, engines roared as another shipment was dropped into the pit. Metal screamed as it fell. Ethan tightened his grip around the smallest dragon. And whispered the only promise he could give. "I've got you." The pit did not care. The Empire did not care. But one human did. Ethan did not remember climbing back up the pit. He only remembered the heat of the tiny dragon against his chest and the way its grip refused to loosen from his jacket. He tied the others gently into an old cargo cloth he found nearby and carried them like fragile glass as he attached a rope to the ladder. Every step upward burned his muscles, but fear pushed him harder than strength ever could. Above him, the sky roared as another waste ship flew over the pit. He climbed faster, heart pounding, afraid that at any moment someone would look down and see him stealing what was meant to be forgotten. When his boots finally touched the surface, his legs almost failed him. He stumbled forward into the shadow of a broken wall and crouched there, breathing hard. The hatchlings whimpered softly. Their tiny bodies shook with cold and fear. Ethan pulled off part of his jacket and wrapped it around them, trying to block the wind and the ash that fell from the red clouds above. He looked at their faces, so small and frightened, and felt something heavy settle inside him. He had taken them from death, but he had not yet given them life. Now he had to run. Ethan moved fast across the empty platform toward his cargo ship. It was an old model, scratched and patched together, but it could still jump through space if he pushed it hard enough. He glanced over his shoulder every few steps, expecting to see guards, drones, or lights slicing through the dark. Nothing followed him, but the silence itself felt like a trap. He reached the ship and rushed up the ramp, sealing it behind him with shaking hands. The inside was quiet and warm compared to the pit, filled with the smell of metal and old fuel. He laid the hatchlings carefully on a padded storage mat, then ran to the control panel and started the engines. The smallest dragon finally loosened its grip and curled into itself, chest fluttering as it slept from exhaustion. Ethan allowed himself one breath of relief. Then the ship lights flickered. A voice came through the speaker. Unregistered departure detected. Identify yourself immediately. Ethan's blood went cold. An imperial signal. His fingers shook over the controls. He turned off the speaker without answering. The engines whined louder as the ship prepared to lift. He failed. A second later, a harsh alarm blared through the cabin. Target lock detected. Ethan spun around, panic rising in his throat. No, 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 he whispered. Before he could do anything, a loud knock shook the hull. Not a weapon. A docking clamp. Someone was attaching to his ship. The airlock on the side of the craft hissed as it began to open. Ethan grabbed the nearest tool, an old metal rod, and stood between the hatchlings and the door. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The lock released. The door slid open. A woman in grey armor stood in the doorway, helmet under her arm. Her hair was short and dark, her face pale from many days under artificial light. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, sharp and tired. Step away from the cargo, she ordered. Ethan didn't move. There's nothing here for you, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She raised a scanner. The device beeped. Her eyes widened slightly. Those are dragon hatchlings, she said. Her voice dropped. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ethan tightened his grip on the rod. I saved them, he said. She stared at him in silence, then slowly lowered the scanner. They were scheduled for destruction, she said quietly. You just took property of the Empire. They're not property, Ethan snapped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the woman exhaled. My name is Lily, she said. I'm an engineer assigned to inspect waste transfers. I should arrest you. Then do it, Ethan said. But look at them first. Lily's eyes moved to the hatchlings. One lifted its head weakly and let out a soft cry. Her face changed. Just a little. She knelt without meaning to. They're alive, she whispered. Yes, Ethan said. They are. Silence filled the cabin. Finally, Lily stood. If I report this, she said slowly, they'll be erased. You along with them. Ethan's jaw tightened. And if you don't? She looked at the control console, then back at him. Then we become criminals. Ethan did not hesitate. I already am. Lily let out a short breath that sounded too close to a laugh. You're insane, she said. Then, after a pause, but so am I. She moved to the door and sealed the docking connection. The alarm stopped. Ethan felt his knees weaken. She returned to the hatchlings and checked their breathing. They're dying, she said softly. Not fast. But slow. Ethan's chest tightened. Can you help them? She nodded. I'll try. She opened storage compartments, pulling out warming sheets, nutrient gels, and small medical tools. Working quickly, she cleaned their wings, fed them drops of energy fluid, and wrapped them in heat fabric. The hatchlings made tiny sounds as they drank, their weak tails twitching. Ethan watched her hands move with silent hope. Hours passed without words. Finally, Lily leaned back. They'll survive the night, she said. But barely. Ethan closed his eyes. Thank you. She gave him a tired smile. You still need to name them, she said. He looked at the smallest one. It held my finger, he said. Lily raised an eyebrow. Name it then. Ethan hesitated, then whispered. Ember. The little dragon shifted, glowing faintly beneath its scales. Lily went pale. Did you see that? Ethan nodded. The ship suddenly shuddered. Lights flashed red. An alert pulsed across the screen. Imperial patrol arriving. Multiple ships. Ethan's breath caught. Lily grabbed the controls. We have to go, she said. But the engines aren't ready, Ethan said. They'll have to be, Lily replied. Outside, dark ships filled the view window. A voice thundered through the speakers. This is Imperial Command. Power down immediately. Lily slammed the console. Hold on, she said. The engines screamed. The hatchlings cried. Ethan wrapped his body around them as the ship lurched upward. Stars blurred. Space twisted. And the ship vanished into the dark. Behind them, the Empire followed. The jump through space almost tore Ethan's body apart. The cargo ship screamed as if it were alive, metal bending and groaning under a force it was never meant to carry. Lights along the walls flickered wildly, blinking between white and red, while sparks danced from open panels above their heads. Ethan lay on the floor beside the hatchlings, arms wrapped around them as tightly as he could without hurting them, his face pressed against the cold metal as the ship shook and twisted like it was swimming through a storm made of fire. When the jump finally ended, it did not end softly. The ship slammed back into normal space with a bone-shaking crash, throwing Ethan across the floor. His shoulder hit the wall hard, sending pain through his arm, but he ignored it and scrambled back toward the hatchlings. They were scattered across the padded mat, tiny bodies rising and falling too fast. The smallest one, Ember, had rolled onto its side, wings twitching weakly. Ethan gathered them again, breath coming in short gasps. Before he could speak, before he could even think, the ship screamed another warning. Multiple targets detected. Ethan looked at the main screen. 5 dark shapes tore through space behind them. Imperial ships. They had followed. Lily stumbled into the cockpit, gripping the wall to steady herself, her face pale and drawn. They're too fast, she said, eyes flying over the controls. This ship can't outrun them. Ethan stood slowly, his legs unsteady. Then we don't run, he said. Lily shot him a look. Then what do we do? Ethan stared at the screen. The Imperial ships were like sharp shadows in the stars, smooth and perfect and made for one purpose only. We hide, he said quietly. Lily frowned. In open space. Ethan pointed. A vast field of broken moons and drifting stone filled the space ahead. Shattered worlds spun slowly around each other like ghosts trapped in endless orbit. Clouds of dust and rock formed thick walls that blocked long-distance scanning. Lily's eyes widened. The asteroid graveyard, she murmured. Ethan nodded. It's chaos, he said. Their sensors won't like chaos. Lily didn't answer. Instead, she slammed her hand down on the controls and pushed the engines to their limit. The ship roared forward, diving straight toward the field of drifting ruin. Behind them, the 5 Imperial ships followed without hesitation. The first rocks struck their hull like hammer blows. The whole ship rattled as chunks of ice and stone scraped along its sides. Alarms howled again, and Lily swore under her breath as she worked the controls, pulling the ship left, then right, then sharply up to avoid a spinning fragment of moon the size of a city. Ethan slid across the floor with each turn, struggling to stay upright. One of the hatchlings tumbled from the mat and squeaked painfully as it rolled. Ethan dove for it, clutching it to his chest just as a violent shake threw him backward. A window on the far side of the room cracked, thin white lines spreading like spiderwebs across the glass. "They're firing," Lily shouted. A blast of blue light streaked past the ship and tore a glowing line through a nearby asteroid, splitting it clean in two. The broken stone drifted apart silently, slow and deadly. Ethan felt his chest tighten. "They don't care if they destroy themselves trying," he whispered. "No," Lily said, teeth clenched. "They care about one thing. What you took." Another blast flew past them. A third struck the side of the ship, sending a shockwave through the hull that knocked Ethan flat. The hatchlings cried out together, tiny voices filled with fear. Then Ember lifted its head. Its dull black scales began to glow. Not bright. Not loud. Just a soft, red light under its skin, like a small coal heating in the dark. Ethan stared. "Ember," he whispered. The light pulsed. A strange warmth filled the air, gentle but powerful. The other hatchlings stirred and slowly lifted their heads. Their wings shook. Their eyes glowed faintly. Lily gasped. "What's happening?" Ethan did not answer. He did not know. He only knew that something ancient was waking up inside creatures the galaxy had thrown away. The ship suddenly lurched again, but this time not from a hit. The air around them bent. Space itself seemed to ripple like water. Outside the window, the stars twisted. The drifting rocks slowed. Then, they moved. Not falling. Not floating. Moving. The asteroids shifted, slowly at first, then faster, sliding through space as if guided by invisible hands. Lily stared at the screen in horror. "They're altering gravity," she whispered. Ethan's breath caught. The hatchlings were doing it. A massive stone the size of a mountain drifted directly into the path of the lead Imperial ship. The ship tried to turn. It failed. Metal screamed as the vessel slammed into the rock, crumpling like paper. Another Imperial ship fired wildly, its shots scattering, striking nothing as space around it twisted and folded. Two smaller rocks smashed through its hull, tearing it in half. The remaining ships pulled back, engines flaring as they tried to escape the chaos. Inside the cargo ship, the hatchlings cried louder, their bodies glowing brighter. Ember stood on shaking legs, wings stretched wide despite the curve in one of them. Light poured from the cracks in its dark scales, painting the cabin in red. Ethan crawled closer, heart pounding. "Easy," he whispered. "You're safe." The glow did not stop. The ship shook. The gravity inside shifted violently. Lily was thrown from her seat and slammed against the far wall. "Ethan," she cried. He grabbed a support bar and pulled himself upright, then crawled toward Ember. The other hatchlings circled the smallest one as if drawn by it. The stone field outside had become a storm of moving worlds, smashing together, breaking apart, spinning wildly around the remaining Imperial ships. "I think they can't control it," Lily gasped. "It's too much." Ethan reached Ember and knelt in front of it. The little dragon's eyes met his. Fear. Confusion. Pain. Ethan placed one hand gently on its glowing chest. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to fight." The light flickered. Ethan swallowed. "I'm here," he whispered. "I chose you. You're not alone anymore." Ember trembled. Then it cried. Not weak. Not small. But loud. The sound rolled through the ship, through space, through the drifting ruins like thunder made from fire. Outside, the asteroids shuddered. And then stopped. All at once. The remaining Imperial ships froze in place, caught between stones that no longer moved. The field went silent. Only drifting dust remained. Inside the ship, Ember's glow faded. The hatchlings collapsed where they stood. And the silence returned. Ethan scooped Ember into his arms, heart aching. "You did it," he whispered. "You're safe." Ember's light dimmed to nothing. Its eyes closed. Lily slowly struggled to her feet, staring out the window at the wreckage. "They'll send more," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I know." He looked down at the dragons. "And next time," he said, voice steady despite his fear, "we will be ready." Beyond the shattered field, the stars burned cold and endless. And somewhere in the dark, the Empire was already hunting. The cargo ship drifted through empty space long after the engines were shut down. No stars moved past the window. No signals called out from nearby systems. It was as if the universe itself had grown quiet, holding its breath. Ethan sat on the floor beside the hatchlings, watching their small chests rise and fall. Ember lay in the middle of the group, its body still and dark, no glow left beneath its scales. Every few seconds, Ethan touched its side just to make sure it was still warm. Lily worked silently in the cockpit. Her hands moved across broken panels and loose wires, trying to stabilize the ship without full power. She had shut down every signal they had, every transmitter, every system that might whisper their location into the endless dark. After a long time, she finally spoke. "There's a place," she said quietly. "It's not on any map the Empire still uses." Ethan looked up. "A place with people?" "Not officially," Lily replied. "A forgotten colony. Built by humans long before the Empire decided we were useful." Ethan listened closely. "They cut it off years ago," she continued. "Said it was a failure. No resources worth the cost. Said no one could still be alive there." Ethan lowered his eyes to the dragons. "They said the same about these," he murmured. Lily met his gaze. "That's why I think it's perfect." She slowly brought the ship back to life, just enough to move. The engines hummed low and weak as the ship changed course, sliding through shadows instead of light. Ethan stayed with the dragons the entire way, his body aching but his arms steady. He whispered to them as if they could hear him, promising warmth and safety and a sky that would not try to kill them. Hours passed. Then the stars returned. A small, dying sun burned ahead of them, weak and pale. Around it circled a single planet, gray and cracked like old stone. It did not shine. It did not call. It barely existed. "This is it," Lily whispered. As they approached, Ethan saw shapes on the surface. Broken towers. Rusted landing pads. Long roads swallowed by sand. The forgotten colony. They landed in the shadow of a leaning structure that once might have been a warehouse. The ramp lowered with a tired groan, and cold air spilled into the ship. It smelled of dust and iron and old storms. Ethan stepped out first, clutching the wrapped hatchlings against his chest. The colony was silent. Not the calm kind of silence. The heavy kind. Buildings stood like skeletons, windows black and empty. Rust covered everything. The ground was cracked and uneven, dotted with pieces of metal half buried by time. "It looks dead," Ethan said. Lily shook her head. "It looks tired," she replied. They moved carefully through the ruins, searching for shelter. Inside one of the larger buildings, they found a room with thick walls and no holes in the ceiling. The air inside was stale, but it blocked the wind. Ethan set the hatchlings down gently on the cleanest patch of floor he could find and unwrapped them. Lily activated a small heater and placed it near them. Warmth slowly filled the room. The dragons stirred. One lifted its head. Then another. Ember remained still. Ethan's chest tightened. He touched Ember's small side. "Nothing." "Lily," he said softly. She rushed over and knelt beside him. She placed 2 fingers against Ember's neck and closed her eyes. "It's alive," she whispered. "Barely." Ethan let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. They spent the next hours doing whatever they could. Lily fed the hatchlings drops of the last warm liquid they had. Ethan used pieces of cloth to clean dust from their wings. He spoke to them quietly, telling them about Earth, about oceans and forests and skies full of light. Then he noticed the light. Not from Ember. From the room. A soft glow from behind a metal door they had not opened. Ethan stood. "Did you turn that on?" he asked. Lily shook her head. They approached the door slowly. It opened with a long, complaining sound. Inside was a hidden chamber. Screens still glowed on the walls, old but alive. Machines breathed softly. Lights flickered over metal tables filled with dust-covered tools and strange crystal devices. And in the center of the room stood a man. Not moving. Not breathing. Frozen. Inside a clear pod. His hair was gray. His face lined with age even in sleep. Tubes ran into his arms and chest. His eyes were closed, but his expression was calm. "Someone's still here," Ethan whispered. Lily stepped closer, reading the faded text on the pod. "Dr. Mason," she said. Ethan touched the control panel. The machine hummed louder. Lights brightened. The pod unlocked with a soft hiss. The man inside gasped. His eyes flew open. He sucked in air like a man drowning for years and waking all at once. His chest rose and fell fast as he coughed and tried to speak. Lily caught him before he fell. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe." Dr. Mason looked around the room, confused and scared. "Where?" he whispered. "You're home," Ethan said. But Mason didn't smile. "They left," he said. "Everyone left." Lily nodded. "We know." Mason pushed himself upright, strength slowly coming back. "Why wake me?" he asked. Ethan hesitated. Then he gestured back toward the other room. Mason followed slowly. When he saw the dragon hatchlings, his breath caught. "No," he whispered. He rushed forward and knelt beside them, hands trembling. "They're still doing it," he said softly. "They're still killing them." Ethan frowned. "You know about dragons?" Mason let out a sad laugh. "I helped hide the truth," he said. He stared at Ember. "Humans and dragons were once allies," he continued. "Long ago. Before the Empire ruled everything." Lily listened closely. "The dragons could feel space," Mason said. "They could bend it. Humans could not. But together." He closed his eyes. "Together, we were unstoppable." Ethan knelt beside him. "So the Empire broke us," he said. Mason nodded. "They feared what we could become." Ethan looked at Ember. "Can you save them?" Mason hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'll try." They moved Ember into the chamber and connected the last working systems. Light washed over its body, slow and warm. Hours passed. Then Ember's chest lifted. Once. Again. A faint red glow returned beneath its scales. Ethan laughed softly, tears in his eyes. Mason shook his head in wonder. "They're not flawed," he whispered. "They're evolving." Outside, thunder rolled. Not from weather. From space. Lily ran to the window. Lights burned in the sky. Ships. Imperial ships. "They found us," she said. Ethan looked down at Ember as its eyes slowly opened. Then back up at the sky. "Then this place won't be forgotten again," he said. And far above them, the Empire prepared to erase one last memory. The sky over the forgotten colony burned with moving light. Imperial ships slid out of the clouds like dark knives, their metal bodies cutting through the air without sound. The ground beneath Ethan's feet trembled as distant engines roared to life, not from the human buildings, but from the enemy above them. Search beams snapped on one by one, slicing across ruined towers and empty streets, hunting for movement in a place that had been dead for years. Inside the shelter, the air felt thick and heavy. The small heater hummed softly in the corner, its weak glow barely touching the walls. Ember lay on the metal table in the old lab, its chest rising in shallow breaths. The soft red light beneath its cracked scales pulsed slowly, like a tired heart. Ethan stood beside the table, one hand resting gently on Ember's side, his eyes fixed on the ceiling as the first distant boom rolled through the colony. "They're landing," Lily said quietly. Dr. Mason closed a panel on one of the old machines and wiped his hands on his coat. "They won't stop," he said. "Not after what they saw." Ethan did not answer. He was listening to Ember's breathing, counting each rise and fall like it was the only thing keeping the world together. Outside, something exploded. Dust shook loose from the ceiling and drifted down like gray snow. The sound echoed through the empty colony, bouncing between broken buildings until it felt like the whole planet was being struck at once. Lily moved to the door and peered through a narrow crack. "There are ground troops," she said. "Drones too." Ethan tightened his jaw. "They'll find us," he said. "Yes," Lily replied. "Soon." Dr. Mason turned to Ethan. "Then you must leave," he said. "Take the dragons and go. Now." Ethan looked at him. "And you?" Mason gave a tired smile. "I stayed here when everyone else ran," he said. "I'm not running now." Ethan shook his head. I'm not leaving you. Mason opened his mouth to argue, but the wall shook again, harder this time, and the lights flickered. Ember let out a weak sound. Ethan turned instantly. I'm here, he whispered. I'm right here. The little dragon's eyes opened slowly. Not wide. Not bright. But alive. A thin line of red light appeared under its skin and spread like a weak flame carried by a shaking hand. Mason leaned in. It's responding to you, he said softly. The bond is forming. Ethan looked down at Ember, his heart racing. I don't know how, he said. I just didn't leave. Mason nodded. Sometimes that's enough. Another blast echoed outside, followed by the sharp crack of weapons fire. The sound was louder now. Closer. Lily stepped back from the door. They've entered the main buildings, she said. We're out of time. Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at the other hatchlings, huddled together near the heater. Their small bodies were stronger now, their eyes brighter than before, but fear still clung to them like dust. He lifted Ember carefully and pulled it against his chest. I'm not running, he said. Lily stared at him. What? They hunted them, Ethan said quietly. They threw them away. And they followed us across space just to finish the job. His voice hardened. I won't give them that. Dr. Mason's eyes filled with something old and dangerous. Then you will make a stand, he said. Ethan nodded. I will. The first drone broke through the roof. Metal crashed inward, shards raining down as a black shape dropped into the room. Its single red eye flared to life, scanning wildly. Lily shouted. Down. Ethan dropped to his knees, curling around Ember as a blast of blue light burned a line across the far wall. The heat seared his shoulder, but he did not move the dragon away. He shielded it with his body. The drone turned toward him. Its weapon charged. Then the room filled with red light. Ember stirred. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough. A pulse rolled outward from its small body like a slow wave through water. The air thickened. The drone froze in place. Then its metal shell bent inward like paper folding under invisible fingers. With a sharp crack, it collapsed into itself and hit the floor in a twisted heap. Silence followed. Ethan stared. Lily stared. Even Mason, who had seen too much in his life, stared. Ember's glow faded. Its body went still again. But the others had seen it. The hatchlings lifted their heads. Their scales glowed faintly. Not just red. Some blue. Some gold. Some a soft white that looked like starlight. Another explosion shook the building. Then shouting. Heavy boots. Imperial voices. They're here, Lily whispered. Ethan stood slowly, his legs shaking but his eyes steady. He placed Ember back beside the others and stepped forward, putting himself between the dragons and the door. The door blew inward. Imperial soldiers flooded the room, weapons raised, armor glowing with internal power. Their faces were hidden behind cold masks. For the Empire, one of them commanded. By order of the Council, surrender the dragons. Ethan did not move. No, he said. The soldiers hesitated for half a second. Then they fired. A crack of energy lit the room. Ethan felt something slam into his side and spin him around. Pain exploded through his ribs, sharp and blinding. He fell to the floor, gasping. Lily screamed his name. Blood warmed his shirt. But he did not black out. He rolled onto his back and looked at the dragons. They were standing. All of them. The smallest. The weakest. The ones the galaxy had thrown away. They stepped forward together. Light filled the room. Not blinding. Not wild. Steady. Strong. The soldiers froze. Their weapons flickered and died. The metal in their armor groaned as it twisted under a force that had no shape. One by one, they dropped to their knees. Some screamed. Some cried. Some simply stared in disbelief. And in the center of it all, Ember opened its eyes. Not tired. Not weak. Bright. A soldier tried to run. The floor rose beneath his feet and threw him back like a toy. Dr. Mason stood in the doorway, staring at the impossible. They're not children anymore, he whispered. They're guardians. The light faded just as quickly as it had come. The soldiers collapsed unconscious. The room fell silent once more. Ethan lay on the floor, breath short and shallow. Lily rushed to him and pressed her hands against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she said. He smiled weakly. "I think." They listened. She let out a broken laugh through tears. "They did," she said. "They really did." Ember crawled toward him, its small body weak again but glowing softly. It climbed onto his chest and curled up there, warm and alive. Ethan closed his eyes. Outside, the Imperial ships circled. But for the first time, they did not fire. They waited. And across the colony, something ancient had finally stood up and refused to be thrown away again. Ethan drifted somewhere between heat and cold, between pain and quiet. Sounds reached him like echoes underwater. Voices came and went, soft and broken, and sometimes the world went dark again before he could understand any of it. His body felt heavy, like it had been buried deep under stone, and every breath burned as if fire lived in his lungs. When he finally opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was not metal or broken stone. It was sky. Real sky. Gray and slow and moving. Clouds crawled across it like tired animals. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then he felt something warm on his chest. Small. Light. Alive. Ember. The little dragon lay curled against him, its body rising gently as it breathed. The cracks in its dark scales glowed faintly, not red like before, but a soft white this time, like moonlight under ash. Ethan tried to move. Pain exploded through his side. He sucked in a breath and groaned. "Don't," someone said. Lily's face appeared above him, pale and tired, with dark shadows under her eyes. "You're alive," Ethan whispered. She smiled, though her eyes were wet. "You stayed," she said. "So we did too." He tried to laugh but it hurt, so he stopped and only smiled instead. "Well, that was a poor plan," he said weakly. Lily let out a small laugh that broke halfway through and turned into a soft sob. She pressed her hands to his shoulders and leaned her forehead against his. "I thought we lost you," she whispered. Ethan lifted one hand with effort and rested it on Ember's back. "I wasn't going anywhere," he said. "Not without them." They had moved him outside sometime while he was unconscious. He lay now on a rough bed made from old blankets and parts of broken furniture, beneath an open sky beside the ruined lab. Fires burned in small controlled circles around the building, casting orange light across the cracked ground. All over the colony, shape after shape moved in the distance. People. Not soldiers. Civilians. Men and women in worn clothes stepped from dark doorways, from shelters and underground rooms that had been sealed for years. Faces peeked out from behind broken walls. Children held on to adults with frightened eyes. Ethan frowned. "They were here all this time?" Lily nodded. "Hidden," she said. "The Empire declared this place dead, so no one ever looked again." Ethan stared at the quiet crowd. "They survived," he whispered. "Yes," Lily replied. "Just like the dragons." Dr. Mason appeared beside them, limp in one leg but standing strong. His face looked older than it had before, like the years he had slept had returned all at once. "You frightened us," he said to Ethan. Ethan gave a tired smile. "Sorry," he said. Mason looked down at Ember. "And you," he murmured. "You did something no one has seen in a very long time." Ethan looked at the old man. "They saved me," he said. Mason shook his head. "No," he said. "You woke them." Ethan did not understand. But his body did. A strange warmth moved through him, not from pain, but from deep under his skin. Not burning. Flowing. Like something slow and alive had entered his blood and decided to stay. He closed his eyes. For just a second. And then saw something. Flames that were not fire. Stars that were not stars. Wings that were not wings. A vast dark sky filled with shapes made of light and thought. Voices without sound. He gasped and opened his eyes. Lily grabbed his hand. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. I can feel them," he said. "All of them." Around him, the hatchlings stirred. Not just Ember. All of them. They lifted their heads slowly and looked at him. And he understood. Not in words. But in warmth. In memory that was not his. In sadness that was old. In trust that should not have been given. But was. Tears ran down his face before he even knew why. They were hunted, he said. 4 generations. Pushed deeper and deeper until even their children weren't allowed to live. Mason closed his eyes. We erased a species without admitting we were doing it, he said. A low sound filled the air. Not a roar. Not a scream. A song. One by one, the hatchlings stood. Their bodies lit softly, different colors beginning to show beneath their scales. One shimmered blue like deep water. One gold like a young sun. One green like leaves after rain. And ember. Ember glowed white. Not small light anymore. Not weak. Clear. Ethan felt something pull at his chest, gently but firmly, like hands asking instead of taking. He closed his eyes again. And stepped forward. Not with his body. With his mind. The sky above them shifted. Clouds moved faster. Wind whispered through broken buildings. The dragons lifted their heads and cried together, voices no longer small or afraid. The sound spread across the colony. The people froze. Not in fear. In wonder. In the distance, the Imperial ships still floated above the planet like waiting vultures. Their weapons stayed quiet. Something had changed. Ethan's pulse slowed. His pain faded to a dull ache. He breathed easier. Mason's voice trembled. The bond, he whispered. It's happening again. Ethan opened his eyes. What is it? Mason looked at him like he was seeing a ghost. The bond is not ownership, he said. It is choice. A dragon does not obey a human. A human does not command a dragon. He swallowed. They walked together. Lily stared at Ethan. And you? She asked. Ethan glanced at Ember. The dragon blinked slowly, and he felt an answer. Not spoken. Given. I'm not their master, Ethan said. I'm their door. The light around Ember flared gently. Not violently. Not in anger. In agreement. Then a sharp sound broke the air. A transmission cut across the sky. A cold voice echoed from the Imperial fleet. Human vessel, the voice said. You are surrounded. Surrender the dragons and you may yet be permitted to live. Ethan sat up slowly, wincing but determined. No, he said quietly. Mason looked at him. They will not stop. Ethan met the old man's eyes. I know, he said. But neither will we. He stood. Unsteady. But standing. Ember climbed his arm and perched on his shoulder, light shining steadily now. Around them, the colony people stepped forward. Not soldiers. Not fighters. Just survivors. Imperial weapons powered up in the sky. The air trembled with threat. And for the first time in decades, the dragons did not hide. They lifted their wings and let the galaxy see them alive again. The sky cracked open with fire. Imperial ships descended lower over the colony, their dark shapes blotting out the weak sun. The air trembled as their engines roared, blowing dust and ash through the broken streets like angry ghosts. Lights spread across the ground as targeting systems locked onto buildings that had once been homes. The ruins glowed with red dots, each one a promise of destruction. Ethan stood in the open, unarmed, the smallest dragon sitting on his shoulder like a living flame. The colony people gathered behind him, silent but unbroken, holding hands, gripping old tools, standing together because it was better than dying alone. The Imperial voice returned, loud and cold, falling from the sky like metal rain. This is your final warning. Release the dragon creatures and step away. Compliance will be rewarded. Ethan lifted his head. No, he said. His voice was quiet, but it traveled. It moved through the crowd. It moved through the sky. It moved through every dragon heart. Around him, the hatchlings stepped forward, not afraid now. Their wings spread slowly, light shining through thin membranes like stained glass. Colors glowed across the ground as their bodies brightened, each dragon standing stronger than it had ever been before. The Imperial ships fired. Blue streaks of light tore through the sky, screaming downward toward the colony. The people cried out. Lily grabbed Ethan's arm. Dr. Mason closed his eyes. Then the light never landed. It stopped. Mid-air. Hanging like frozen lightning just meters above the ground. Ethan felt the air tighten around him, like invisible hands lifting a weight from his chest. Ember's glow grew brighter. Warmth spread through Ethan's body, flowing into his veins not like fire, but like understanding. He did not force it. He did not command. He invited. The dragons sang. The sound rose from small throats but filled the sky, a deep, living music that did not belong to one world or one time. It vibrated through stone and bone and memory, and the frozen weapons in the air shattered into dust, falling harmlessly like glowing snow. A second wave of ships moved forward. Heavy cannons charged, their bellies glowing white-hot. Ethan took a step forward. The colony held its breath. Above them, space bent. The stars behind the fleet stretched and twisted as if pulled by unseen fingers. Large sections of air warped like liquid glass. One of the Imperial cruisers suddenly tilted to the side, dragged off course by a force it could not measure. Then another. Then 3 more. Their perfect formations broke apart, ships smashing into one another like blind giants. Explosions ripped through space. Fire bloomed where nothing had been moments before. The Empire struck back with everything it had. Missiles poured from open bays. Laser fire filled the sky. Drones rained downward, screaming as they fell. But the dragons rose to meet them. The hatchlings lifted from the ground for the very first time, wings trembling with effort but shining with power. Ember leapt from Ethan's shoulder and climbed into the air, no longer small in spirit, though its body still was. The older ships fired. The dragons answered. Gold flame curved through the sky, bending around people and buildings like it knew where not to burn. Blue light washed across the drones, freezing them mid-fall before they shattered into harmless dust. Green light climbed broken towers and mended cracked stone as if time itself were being asked to forgive. Ethan fell to his knees, not in pain, but in awe. He could feel all of it. The fear. The courage. The long years of being hunted. And the sudden, burning relief of finally standing in the light. A massive Imperial flagship pushed through the chaos, its hull wide enough to swallow the colony whole. Its main weapon charged, a dark sphere forming at its core that pulled light into itself. Dr. Mason gasped. "That weapon can break a moon," he whispered. Ethan looked up. Ember hovered before the giant machine, wings spread wide. The tiny dragon glowed brighter than anything else in the sky. Ethan felt the fear. Not his. Ember's. But it was not the fear of dying. It was the fear of failing. Ethan stood despite the pain in his body. "It's okay," he whispered into the empty air. "You don't have to be anything but alive." Ember turned in the sky. And spoke. Not with sound. With thought. With feeling. With a voice that went straight into every mind that heard it. "We lived." The words were soft. Simple. Heavy as stars. "We were thrown away." The Imperial flagship fired. A wave of darkness rolled toward the planet. The dragons cried together. Light surged forward. Not in anger. In truth. The dark weapon struck the light and shattered like glass. The force wave rolled backward, slamming into the flagship and tearing its center apart. Fire burst from its sides as it drifted apart slowly, broken not by power alone, but by something the Empire had never learned to fight. Choice. Across the colony, people fell to their knees. Not in fear. In release. The remaining Imperial ships began to retreat. Not in order. In panic. They turned their engines away and fled into space, leaving fire and silence behind. The sky cleared. The broken sun shone again through thinning clouds. Ethan dropped to the ground, exhausted beyond words. Ember returned to him and curled against his chest, its glow soft and warm once more. Lily knelt beside them, shaking. "We're alive," she whispered. Mason looked at the sky with tears on his face. "No," he said softly. "We're free." Above the colony, drifting wreckage burned like falling stars. Across the galaxy, systems went dark as news spread. The Empire could bleed. The dragons had returned. And one human had stood between them and extinction. The universe would not forget that. Morning arrived slowly over the shattered colony, as if the planet itself feared waking too quickly after everything that had happened. The sky was pale and unsure, light touching broken towers and burned ground gently, almost with apology. Smoke still curled from distant wreckage, thin and weak now, rising into the air like tired ghosts finally letting go. Ethan lay on a simple bed inside one of the oldest buildings still standing. The roof had collapsed long ago, so light fell freely through hanging wires and broken stone. Dust drifted through the air like tiny stars. His body felt heavy, but not empty. For the first time in his life, the ache in his chest was not only pain. It was full. It was warm. Ember slept beside him. Not curled in fear. Not tight and ready to run. Relaxed. Safe. The dragon's glow was soft now, steady and calm, like a small heart beating in light. When Ethan breathed, Ember's chest moved with his, a quiet rhythm shared between two lives that had found each other in the dark. Ethan opened his eyes and stared at the broken ceiling for a long time, listening to distant voices outside. People were working. Clearing rubble. Building fires for cooking instead of warmth. Some were laughing. Others were crying. A few were doing both at the same time. The war was over. At least, this one was. Lily stepped into the room without making a sound, carrying a cup of warm water and a piece of dry bread. "You're awake," she said. Ethan smiled tiredly. "Still here," he answered. She handed him the cup and sat on a broken crate beside the bed. "The Empire pulled back," she said. "Every sector. Every fleet. They're scared." Ethan stared into the water. "Good," he murmured. Lily hesitated, then spoke softly. "The galaxy is changing already. Messages are coming in. Colonies that were silent for years are speaking again. Species the Empire crushed are rising. They're asking about the dragons." Ethan glanced at Ember. "They're not weapons," he said. Lily nodded. "They know," she replied. "That's what frightens the Empire the most." Dr. Mason appeared at the doorway, leaning heavily on a metal cane. His eyes were tired, but clear. "They're afraid of choice," he said. "Because choice cannot be owned." Ethan carefully sat up, his body protesting but obeying. "What happens now?" he asked. Mason looked out the window toward the rising light. "Now," he said, "we build something the Empire never allowed us to imagine." Outside, the colony no longer felt like a grave. People filled the streets. Some were pulling metal from wrecked ships. Others were planting small green things in cracked soil that should not yet be ready to grow. Children chased glowing dragons through the air, laughing in disbelief as wings brushed their hair instead of claws. No one told the dragons to stay. No one told the people to kneel. They moved together. Not as rulers and tools. As neighbors. Ethan stepped into the sunlight slowly, each movement careful but strong. When he looked up, he saw them. Not just hatchlings. Dragons of all sizes descended from the higher ruins where they had hidden for years. Some were scarred. Some were missing wings or eyes or parts of their tails. But they flew anyway. Grooved scales shone like mountains. Wide wings painted the sky. The age of hiding was over. Ember lifted from Ethan's shoulder and circled once over his head before landing again, proud and small and brave. Ethan knelt and touched the ground. For the first time, the planet touched him back. Not with pressure. With welcome. Days passed. Imperial ships never returned. Instead, others arrived. Small vessels. Broken fleets. Civilian transports. Survivors from across space came seeking the truth they had heard whispered. The dragons are alive. The Empire can fall. One human stood and the stars answered. Ethan did not like being called that. He told them he was only a man who made a simple choice. I refused to leave them behind. People listened. Not because he was powerful. Because he was honest. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple with the coming night, Ethan sat alone on the edge of the colony. Ember lay beside him, watching stars slowly emerge. "Do you ever wish you'd never come here?" Lily asked quietly, standing behind him. Ethan shook his head. I wish I'd come sooner, he said. Ember stretched and yawned, a tiny spray of sparks drifting into the darkness. Ethan smiled. You saved me, he whispered to the dragon. Ember looked at him. And this time. Spoke with sound. Not loud. Not grand. Soft. So soft it almost broke him. You stayed. Ethan closed his eyes. That was all I had, he said. It was enough, Ember replied. The stars above them shimmered. The quiet between breaths became sacred. Far away, somewhere beyond charts and control, the Empire counted losses it did not understand. And worlds long silent whispered again. Hope did not roar. It did not burn. It did not conquer. It stayed. And that was how the galaxy began again.